what I'm going to do is fix the tax system. For example, we have 1,000 trillionaires in America. I mean, billionaires in America. And what's happening? They're in a situation where they, in fact, pay 8.2% in taxes. If they just paid 24%, 25%, either one of those numbers, they'd raise $500 billion dollars, I should say, in a 10-year period. We'd be able to wipe out his debt. We'd be able to help make sure that all those things we need to do, child care, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our healthcare system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Ouch. If you were paying any attention at all to the debate last night and everything that's happened since then, that was one of the key moments. Came really early, and there were a lot others like it, and it has a lot of people going, holy crap, is this the best that we have for the United States? And frankly, neither candidate really distinguished themselves on how they did here. But we're going to focus on some of the ramifications of what we saw last night. Most people are going to be talking today about, what this means, who won the debate. Is Biden going to be replaced? Is the Democratic Party planning on substituting someone else in there, et cetera? And those are all valid questions. But we're going to take a look today at the ramifications of this now. Not just at the election, and in between now and January 20th, when the next president is going to take over office, whoever happens to win this, because there are some dangers just in between here and there. And we have somebody really good to help us break this down today, somebody with some of the best international connections and best mind on assessing how things impact from America beyond our shores and how that ramifications back with us. That is former CIA analyst Larry Johnson. Larry, always glad to have you on the show.
Thank you, Danny. I'm always honored and privileged to be with you.
And man, this debate last night, I mean, it was anticipated in terms of people were wondering what was going to happen. How would they conduct themselves? Because Trump, has all kinds of ways he's been on debates before. He's been combative. He's been, trying to stalk Hillary Clinton, et cetera. And, and they weren't sure how he was going to be and what he was going to bring up. And then, of course, on the Bidens, they were wondering, would he have a senior moment? I heard that a lot in the weeks before this. And then some people were saying, or maybe it'll be like the State of the Union, because they had those same concerns before the State of the Union last March. And he comes out on fire, and he's just this firebrand and yelling and screaming for 90 minutes. And so people were wondering, which one of those are we going to get today? And we didn't get the firebrand. That's an understatement, as that first clip there showed, when he literally lost his train of thought in the middle of it and continued on. And just like your, we're going to get into some policy specifics, and I'm going to show you a number of clips, of course.
Sure.
But just what was your general impression when you watched it? What did you walk away with?
It was like a second version of the movie Apollo 13. Houston, we have a problem. I am shocked that people are shocked that they somehow expected Joe Biden to show up as Daniel Webster, some articulate orator who could spellbound the country for 90 minutes. We've been watching for 3 years both the physical and mental decline of the guy, and yet we had just last week Mika Brzezinski and Joe Scarborough over at MSNBC insisting that, oh, no, these are Republican manufactured clips. Biden's not really that bad. And then you watch him this morning, they're going, oh my God, he really is that bad. And yet they keep trying to put the lipstick on the pig here. And that expression, putting lipstick on the pig, means you're trying to take something that's ugly and pretty it up. And I don't care how much lipstick you apply to this one, it ain't going to get pretty. So, the other thing that was interesting, though, Danny, is people very much anticipated that the moderators, Jake Tapper, Dana Bash, would be bashing Trump, that they would be, giving Trump 5 seconds to respond and then giving Biden unlimited time. They played it straight up, which I'm inclined to believe that this was a deliberate play on the part of, let's call it the powers that be. They are orchestrating a moment to get rid of Joe Biden. The only problem is Biden, particularly Joe and his wife, ain't cooperating. So this is we are in for the next 3 months of some utter chaos in American politics.
Yeah, you hit the nail right on the head. I was actually going to go there, but you beat me to the punch, because here's a headline out of the New York Times, which openly said, obviously New York Times has been very, very kind to the Democratic Party and certainly to Biden in finding the best angles possibly to present anything here. And, they write a fumbling performance and a panicky party. I was watching the ABC News post-debate comments last night, and they had a lot of the Democratic heavyweights on there, and they immediately started throwing him under the bus, saying that they had been talking to senior members of the Democratic Party who were texting them during the debate and saying, "Oh my God, we have to have an emergency meeting. We might have to replace him," et cetera. And to me, it just seemed a little bit odd that was the immediate response. And a friend of mine who watched the CNN post coverage that I didn't watch said the knives came out for Biden too. And again, that's like, okay, this seems like a little bit too coordinated to have been an accident or to be genuine shock that they were surprised. So I'm tending to agree with you that a lot of evidence suggests that this was a plan. And one of the reasons why they had it so early, so they've got time to get a new horse on board.
Yeah, no, it's exactly right. Now, I've got it from two very reliable, connected sources that a year ago, there was a meeting in New York City with Michelle Obama, and Democratic operatives basically got her to agree that Biden will be forced out, that she'll come in as the nominee. Now, my friends, they believe that. And that may have happened. But my point in all that is Michelle Obama couldn't attract flies to her Netflix. When she was on Netflix and she had a show, she couldn't attract viewers. And so don't tell me that she's somehow this popular person that's going to attract all these votes. And that's the problem. The people that are manipulating this for the Democrats think that they have accounted for all of these variables. It's like they put together their battle plan. And as you remember what the battle plan was going into Iraq, how long did that last? Was it the first hour? Maybe 2 hours? And then, okay, man, we're on to something new and we got to adapt. That's exactly what's going to be taking place here in politics. No matter how, much planning and manipulation is going on behind the scenes, there are always these wild card variants out there. If you watched Jill Biden last night celebrating Joe Biden's performance, it was magnificent. Here's your cookie.
I did not see that. You got to be kidding me.
No,
I didn't see that.
I mean, she was, can you believe it? Can you believe, she was out there saying, can you believe how well he did? And, look, there was a reason that children's fable about the king with no clothes was written. Because this is not new to humanity. Human beings have been, deluding themselves for millennia and telling themselves, nah, that bear's not hungry. He's not going to eat us. Then why are you putting on your running shoes? Oh, I just have to be able to outrun you. Okay. So when we keep telling ourselves, oh yeah, Biden's fine. He's mentally intact. He's making the decisions. You got to be sitting in the Kremlin or in Beijing going, who the hell's in charge?
Yeah, we're certainly going to talk about that in just a second. Gary, is that the video that he's talking about?
Joe, you did such a great job. You answered every question. You knew all the facts. And let me ask the crowd, what did Trump do? Why?
Oh, my stars. Whoa.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I had missed that. Thanks, Gary, for finding it so fast. Man. Oh, goodness gracious.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is so, it's one thing if it's all, let's say it's orchestrated to create the conditions. Okay, Biden, you got to step out. But I'm watching some of, like you commented on ABC News last night. They were calling it straight. This morning, my wife wakes up and for whatever reason, she checked into ABC and she came in to the kitchen, shaking their head, saying, "You're not going to believe this." ABC was saying Biden did great and Trump lost. And I go, really? So when you get to a stage where your media has become Baghdad Bob and they've lost complete credibility, you know that you are a country that's in trouble, and there's no quick fix for it. So we're going to listen. The bloodletting is going to go on the next week. What you want to have, Danny? You want to have the popcorn sales, because get out your popcorn. This is going to be some. There's going to be some fights and some bloodletting going on that like we've never seen.
Now, we're gonna look at some of the comments from the debate anyway, because even if we agree that the chances of Biden being the nominee on the 5th of November is probably pretty low right now, but still, the things that he says still do represent what the administration view, and probably whoever else would come in. I doubt they're going to make major policy changes. So I'm going to look at some of the specific pairs, and we'll see what Trump said as well. But before I get into that, though, I wonder if we could just kind of chat for a second on some legitimate possibilities of who they might put in there at this late. And I know Gavin Newsom is the first name to come up, but is he the only one?
Gavin Newsom? What's his campaign slogan going to be? I'm going to do for America what I've done for California.
Yeah. That's he may look good, and he's certainly younger, but man, he's got a negative track record like nobody.
Yeah, I know how to get rid of all the illegal immigrants. I'll make sure that I do exactly for the United States what I've done for California. Look at all the people that have left California while I've been governor. They're fleeing in droves. All you got to do is go online to like U-Haul and put in that you want to move from Florida to California. They'll give you the damn trailer. Really? You're going to go from Florida to California? Here, we'll pay you. And yet, if you're in California trying to move to Florida, it's like, can you take out a home equity loan and sell us your firstborn child? It's going to cost that much to get the U-Haul. So, Newsom is one of these things. He's one that the political elite sit around and say, oh, I'd like to sleep with him. He's good looking. That's the extent of their choice. The other one's Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan. But the people in Michigan barely know who she is. Part of the reason you go through primaries is to create some name recognition, some memes, some storylines, at least so people can say, oh yeah, I remember who that is. Whitmer, they don't know who she is. Gavin Newsom, frankly, he's not that well known outside of California. And the ones that know him in California, they're not exactly lining up going, oh man, what a great governor. I wish he was president. That's not happening. That's the problem the Democrats have. Kamala Harris. I think right now the most likely is that Kamala Harris is going to wind up top of the ticket.
You got to be kidding. No, there's no way. And her negatives are worse than anybody's been as a VP. There's no way that she would go. Is there?
Listen, Danny, this is your problem. You keep thinking logic, rationality. Man, we're in a world that's not rational and it's not logical. This is surreal. Kamala Harris, she's got a death grip on that vice presidency. And the only way, it's going to be like Charlton Heston's old claim with the NRA. You're going to have to pry this rifle from my cold, dead fingers. You're going to have to pry the vice presidency from her cold, dead fingers. She ain't giving it up. She wants to be president.
Okay, so on that reel that Gary was just rolling on there, where people are already speculating about who they might be, one of them was Hillary Clinton, who just had a book out, and I don't discount that, because she was, you remember, late in the 2020, she was still saying, well, maybe I should run again. So she never left that behind, and certainly for a media, that would be quite a show if we had a replay of the 2016.
Let's face it, Hillary Clinton is a virulent case of human herpes. Okay, you can't get rid of it. It's just this virus that keeps coming back. She's not popular. And she has, she's disgraced herself in so many ways. And against that backdrop, I don't know, just before coming on your show, Supreme Court announced, hey, all those January 6th defendants, DOJ, the law you prosecuted them under, no good. They're free.
What?
Yeah. The Supreme Court just decided that the law that was used to prosecute the January 6th defendants and charge them, including Donald Trump, moot. It was used improperly. They got to go back to the drawing board.
Holy crap! That's major news right there by itself. I did not see that.
Yeah. So that, I mean, well, you're getting ready for your show, and it happened like 5 minutes before the show started.
Holy crap!
So
man,
that's gonna factor into this as well.
That's an earthquake, a legal earthquake.
Because it destroys the January 6th meme that all these people continue to insist that, oh my God, that was an insurrection. You want to see an insurrection? Watch what happened in Kenya the other day. Okay, that's an insurrection. The January 6th with people milling around the Capitol looking at, oh my God, there's Nancy Pelosi's office. Isn't that nice? So, yeah, this is a big change. And
wow.
That's why I say that our political system right now, we're one step above Bolivia, barely. We're at a lower altitude. We don't have as much cocaine. Well, take that back. We may have more cocaine use in Washington than we do in Bolivia. But the reality is the chaos. We're just like Bolivia without the military coup yet.
Okay, and now that's a good place to really to pivot kind of back into some of the things I wanted to talk about, because the ramifications of what we saw last night, not just for the election, but also for now, here and now, because I want to get into some of the issues of how this is being viewed around the world and what the risks are given some of the things that are going on. And kind of as a way to start this, I want to talk about several of the topics that were discussed last night. And so, well, let's just start off with that. Let's go, Gary, first of all, to the Joe Biden talking about Hamas. And in each one of these cases, I'm going to show you a Biden and then a Trump response, and then we'll talk about good and bad for either one of them.
Hamas cannot be allowed to be continued. We continue to send our experts and our intelligence people as to how they can get Hamas like we did bin Laden. You don't have to do it. And by the way, they've been greatly weakened, Hamas, greatly weakened, and they should be. They should be eliminated. But you've got to be careful for using certain weapons among population centers.
And then he talks a little bit further about that one more time about that Hamas is the one that wants to continue the war.
The only one who wants the war to continue is Hamas, number one. They're the only ones standing out. We're still pushing hard to get them to accept. In the meantime, what's happened? In Israel, we're finding that the only thing I've denied Israel was 2,000-pound bombs. They don't work very well in populated areas. They kill a lot of innocent people. We're providing Israel with all the weapons they need and when they need them. And by the way, I'm the guy that organized the world against Iran when they had a full-blown intercontinental ballistic missile attack on Israel. No one was hurt. No one Israeli was accidentally killed, and it just stopped. We saved Israel. We are the biggest producer of support for Israel of anyone in the world.
Okay, we saved Israel. Now, there's some truth to that in terms of, at least on that day, I think it was April 13th, but I'm not sure that using the United States Armed Forces as the Israeli Air Force is really the best use of American weaponry.
Yeah, look, regardless of what Biden said and regardless of what Trump said, U.S. policy towards Israel is not going to change. In terms of what needs to happen is the United States calls up Netanyahu and says, we're cutting you off. You're not getting another damn penny, not another missile, bomb, piece of ammunition, nothing. You're going to stop this. You're going to end up with a negotiated settlement. No, they'll perpetuate with the myth that Hamas can be defeated. And even the Israeli general, head of the army, admitted, yeah, we can't defeat it. It's an idea. It's not an actual movement. As far as people's voting and their policy preference, if anything, Trump is probably more pro-Israel than Biden. And so he will attract and is attracting significant amounts of the Jewish money in the United States. So,
and in fact, here was Trump's comment in response to what Biden said there. Check this out.
Israel's the one that wants to go. He said the only one who wants to keep going is Hamas. Actually, Israel is the one, and you should let him go and let him finish the job. He doesn't want to do it. He's become like a Palestinian but they don't like him because he's a very bad Palestinian. He's a weak one.
Yeah, so kind of to your point there, he just said,
Yeah.
yep, let Israel go and finish the job. No talk about negotiated settlement, no talk about withholding anything. I've talked to some of the folks that are on Trump's campaign in the foreign policy advisor field, and they say that his best case scenario is that this thing gets done before he takes office, if he assuming that he's going to win, because he doesn't want to deal with it. And I think you kind of can see that in there.
And listen, I think that's in fact what's likely to happen. That Israel is intent on going into Lebanon. If they do that, it's going to wind up to be a complete disaster for Israel. I think it will put the very state of Israel at jeopardy of surviving. They will suffer a massive defeat. This also, though, it could spin off and I know that Doug McGregor's been on your program talking about it. It could spin off in some directions that a wider regional war. Again, that's not going to advantage Israel, and it's we're in no condition to even fight such a war. Look at the Eisenhower; it's limping back to Norfolk. And it's not, and they don't have a new carrier out there to replace it right away. One will get out there eventually, but what we're witnessing is that our assumption that America has unlimited military power and therefore whoever we back will have unlimited resources, that's been exposed as nope, that's not true.
And Larry, I want to look at a couple of aspects of that very situation, because obviously it seems that both presidential candidates are the same, and there won't be any change. To your point there, but let's look at what that means. There's two areas I want to examine. Number one is that if Israel goes into Hezbollah, which they've been preparing literally for about a decade and a half on there, and so they've got a lot of good defensive positions, certainly well stocked in ammunition that they can fire, and that can cause all kinds of trouble. But that means that if Israel goes in there, that will be a substantially more difficult tactical fight than what they've been doing in Hamas, and it will require a substantially higher volume of ammunition. So the question is, can the United States, after just signing this big new deal with Ukraine to keep sending them all that stuff, now add also a higher volume of ammunition for especially artillery shells, which they'll need a lot more of in that kind of a fight? Do we have it without getting into our critical war stocks of our own?
No, absolutely not. And it's across the board. There are reports that Israel's got 3 Patriot missile batteries that it no longer uses. So the United States is negotiating to get those to Ukraine. But when you look at the missiles, I did a piece a week ago on counting the missiles. That when they first produced they produced over 10,000 missiles. What people don't understand is every time a Patriot battery is fired at an inbound target, they got to fire 2 missiles for that one target. Well, December 29th, 2023 in Ukraine, on one day, Russia fired 224 ballistic missiles. If you assume that a Patriot tried to engage each one of those targets, we're talking over 440 Patriot missiles fired against those 224 Russian missiles. Why does that matter? Because Lockheed Martin only produces 550 missiles a year. We're not talking a month or a week, a year. So right there in one day, they could potentially, Ukraine use up 90% of the stock. Well, that goes across the board to 155 millimeter shells, to ATACMS, to HIMARS, to Javelins. We shredded our industrial base. We moved our workers out of plants where they were making stuff to McDonald's and Wendy's where they're taking orders and asking you if you want to supersize it. So, and then all of a sudden we turn around and say, oh, well, let's press that button and start the production. Ain't happening. And we need to wake up to that reality.
So that's why I'm saying I'm totally endorsing your contention that this would be disaster for Israel to move in there, because I'm not sure that we can support them with enough ammunition. But then that gets to the second issue I want to look at there, and that's the other half of the equation, because especially if Hezbollah was starting to be, defeated, let's say that Israel was somehow able to success or at least cause a lot of casualties. It seems like at least a 50-50 chance that Iran is not going to stay on the sidelines and allow them to be defeated without getting in. And then that also tails into back to Russia, because Vladimir Putin has said that because the U.S. is allowing Ukraine to use its weapons in Russian territory, he is going to allow himself the consideration of doing the same. And the question I have specifically of you is, do you think in that scenario, which is hardly far-fetched, that Russia may help Iran in the fight against Israel and the United States if we get involved, which is also not a given?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Israel's earned the enmity of Putin and Russia because of their support for Ukraine. And here's the real irony: this Jewish state that claims that it needs the Jewish state because of the Holocaust, because of the Nazis, is fully backing the Nazis in Ukraine. Now, you can't make this stuff up because, it's like that old Dave Chappelle routine. He did a comedy routine once where he was the head of the KKK. Now, for people that don't know who Dave Chappelle is, he's a black comic, and the piece was hilarious. He was a blind guy that thought he was white, and he's actually black, running the KKK. That's sort of what you got. That's what you got going on between Israel and Ukraine right now. So absolutely, Russia's going to do it. And listen, if you didn't hear it, in the last 24 hours, the Russian Minister of Defense gave orders to the Defense Department, basically shoot down any U.S. ISR in the Black Sea. Those orders were issued. That came in the wake of the phone call with Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin. I guarantee you part of that phone call was the Defense Minister of Russia telling him, you put any of your aircraft in our zone there, we're going to shoot it down. You're warned. Be forewarned.
Yeah, I did see that this morning, and I think that's a good assessment of what happened during that phone call. At least one of the things. I'm sure that there was probably some others, but now it remains to be seen. Are we going to put some more ISR up there and test them? Because I just can't imagine that they wouldn't shoot them down. And what are we going to do about it? And other than lose another aircraft. But that's going to be a problem for them, and we'll have to see how that's going to work out. I want to shift on the next to what was said by the two candidates. The issue was Afghanistan, but then that tailed in some other things. Biden didn't say a whole lot on that. When he was addressed with, you've made a lot of mistakes on the Afghan withdrawal. This is one of the few defenses he actually lifted in his favor.
We got over 100,000 Americans and others out of Afghanistan during that airlift.
So we got 100,000 people out, and okay, that's fine. But there was a whole bunch of other things that happened on there, and here's what Trump had to say.
The most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, Afghanistan, where we left billions of dollars of equipment behind. We lost 13 beautiful soldiers, and 38 soldiers were obliterated. And by the way, we left people behind, too. We left American citizens behind. When Putin saw that, he said, you know what? I think we're going to go in and maybe take this was his dream. I talked to him about it, his dream. The difference is he never would have invaded Ukraine, never. Just like Israel would have never been invaded in a million years by Hamas. You know why? Because Iran was broke with me. I wouldn't let anybody do business with them. They ran out of money. They were broke. They had no money for Hamas. They had no money for anything. No money for terror. That's why you had no terror at all during my administration. This place, the whole world is blowing up under him.
Now, I think Trump is right on some things and wrong on some things there. In terms of what he's right on, I do believe that if he had been in the White House in won the last election, that Putin would not have invaded, because I think he would have been willing to negotiate with him. So I think he's probably right on there. But I don't see any evidence that Hamas had any concern with who's in the White House with what they did on October 7th. And I think that was going to happen one way or the other.
No, it was a planned military operation. People could say, "Oh, it was a terrorist attack." No, it wasn't a terrorist attack. It was a planned military operation. That there were terrorist acts committed as part of that operation, but it was nothing that the United States could have stopped that if we would have stopped Israel from occupying the West Bank and taking territory from Palestinians. But again, this gets into this whole there's no one place you can mark as the beginning point where we went astray. We've been astray for years with all this enabling behavior. Trump did make an error, big error, calling those Marines who died soldiers. Now, you and I understand Marines change. We're not soldiers, we're Marines. Sorry. And but the fact of the matter is, getting Marines killed like that, and then it causes people to step back and say, okay, we sacrificed American blood in Afghanistan for 22 years for what purpose? What was our goal? And at the end, they say, well, to make contractors richer, to make defense corporations, to allow them to have reason to continue to produce expensive weapons. And so, the United States policy right now is adrift, and it's clearly not under control with Joe Biden. With Donald Trump, we're going to get a little more balance in some areas, but with respect to the Middle East, it's not going to change. And what we're failing to come to grips with as Americans is we no longer have the kind of power and influence there to direct and control events. Those events are directing and controlling us. And that, I think, is going to be the theme over the next 6 months.
Yeah, yeah. And let's look at what the two sides said on the whole Russia-Ukraine war, because I think if there's one area where I think a Trump presidency has the best chance to bring this to an end, for him to make a difference and a real stark change between the two parties, I think this is the one. Here's what Biden said on Putin and the war.
Putin is a war criminal. He's killed thousands and thousands of people. And he has made one thing clear. He wants to reestablish what was part of the Soviet Empire, not just a piece. He wants all of Ukraine. That's what he wants. And then do you think he'll stop there? Do you think he'll stop when if he takes Ukraine? What do you think happens to Poland? What do you think of Belarus? What do you think happens to those NATO countries? And so if you want a war, you ought to find out what he's going to do, because if in fact he does what he says and walks away, and by the way, all that money we give Ukraine are from weapons we make here in the United States. We give them the weapons, not the money at this point. And our NATO allies have produced as much funding for Ukraine as we have. That's why we're strong.
So I think you can see right there, he's basically saying if our side wins, it's status quo is going to continue on. Putin's a war criminal, ergo we can't have a negotiated settlement with him. And, oh, look, it makes us a lot of money. Really, to your point there again, he actually said that out loud. So that just makes me shake my head, because it, again, totally disconnected from ground truth reality.
Well, in fact, this problem may be solved. This may be another one of those situations that's solved before Trump takes office, if he's elected. If you saw the video yesterday of Volodymyr Zelensky, he was shaken. Somebody got to him and gave him a big dose of truth, because he says on this video, and I'm quoting, "We don't have much time," referring to Ukraine. "We have a lot of wounded and dead people on the battlefield." Now, he was pushing his peace plan, but what he was admitting for the first time, how much trouble Ukraine is in, how many people that they're losing, and the fact that he finally conceded, instead of saying, "Oh yeah, we're killing millions of Russians." No, he emphasized, "We don't have much time." I think he's even recognizing that if Trump gets elected, boy, the party boat is over. Everyone's going to have to go to shore, get off, put away the hurricanes and the Mai Tais, and sober up, because
and to that end, and validating his concern, here's what Trump did say.
The money that we're spending on this war, and we shouldn't be spending, it should have never happened. I will have that war settled between Putin and Zelensky as president-elect before I take office on January 20th. I'll have that war settled.
Not sure how he's going to do that when he has no power as president, but at least indirectly. But I think that they're actually, I don't know what he meant by that, but I think that you're seeing the evidence of it actually potentially in the clip you just talked about with Zelensky, which I have not yet seen. But I think that he knows that, and especially after this debate here, I think that Biden basically lost the election last night. I just can't even imagine any possibility where he's going to win now, especially over those who are not committed, Democrats already. And that has direct ramifications for what Trump is going to do, because and I view this is one of the few things you can actually count on him doing what he said if he gets elected. And Zelensky has to know that if you just keep going down this path that he's on with this ridiculous 10-year thing that he signed with Biden, that's not worth the paper it's signed on.
No, it was clear that the way the war is going, the Biden administration's grasping at straws. They don't have a strategy. And I know Doug McGregor and you have been on and talking about this extensively. War is not just about how many guys can you put out in tanks and in a column and attack a particular target, and can you wipe it out? No, this is we keep forgetting the political dimensions of this. And what we're witnessing has been that we went from Russia as a potential friend and ally to now they are a committed adversary. And when the other day, when the U.S. Ambassador Lynn Tracy was called in to the foreign ministry, Lavrov told her, "We are no longer friends." Now, and he said, "We're no longer at peace." Now that's coming from a diplomat. That's an extremely strong language, and so to put it in those kinds of stark terms, it's just one step shy of saying we're declaring war and we're going to shut your embassy down and we're closing our embassy, and good luck. Hope you survive.
By the way, you to hear Gary found that comment.
Oh, yeah.
I want to see that real quick, and then I want you to continue on.
Yeah, listen to this.
We don't have too much time because we have a lot of wounded and dead people on the battlefield and through civilians. That's why we don't want to have this war during years. We don't have too much time.
Wow. Yeah, that is very, very telling. You're right. I have never seen him say anything like that other than in early March of 2022, when it looked like that he recognized they needed to make a negotiated settlement heading into Istanbul. Right. He made some of those comments. Never since until today.
Yeah. No. So Uncle Truth got to him, came in and sat him down and said, "Okay, here's the situation. Number one, Joe Biden's not going to be around come November. So you're going to be on your own. You don't have your American sugar daddy to rely on. Number two, the Russians are killing so many of us. We're not going to be able to continue. Number three, key brigades, six battalions of the Azov battalions refused to follow orders. They said, nah, we're not attacking. We're done with being cannon fodder. We're not following orders." So already you've got disarray in the Ukrainian military. You can't find enough replacements. Even if you do scrape up some guys off the street and shove them into uniforms, they're not going through any kind of basic training that's going to equip them to be minimally competent in the battlefield. And they got a real problem with they're using up supplies. Every time they fire a Patriot missile, it's not like there are three more coming in through the back door. They're firing it, and that's one less in inventory. And it's the same with artillery. It's the same with armored vehicles. It's the same with tanks. I mean, everything in this logistics chain is getting shorter, not longer. And yet, for the Russians, it's the exact opposite. They got 100,000 troops sitting there doing nothing up in Belarus right now. They could mount an offensive towards Kiev in a heartbeat. And what does Ukraine have to throw in to stop that? Nothing. So, yeah. I mean, so somehow I saw a frightened Zelensky in that. He's afraid.
His facial expressions were very, very different than the ones I've typically seen of him. And he was showing some genuine concern. I mean, you can say, play that one more time, Gary.
We don't have too much time because we have a lot of wounded and dead people on the battlefield and through civilians. That's why we don't want to have this war during years. We don't We don't have too much time.
Larry, I want to ask you. We got one more pair of things to look at from the debate last night, which have probably the most ramifications and the most significance that was talked last night about the future of the United States. But before I get there, I'd just like to ask your kind of off the cuff opinion here, because I have heard some commentators of recent days start to suggest that Zelensky could be in real danger of assassination, and not from the Russian side necessarily, but possibly from the U.S. side. And this person who said this cited several times in American history where we have taken out friendly leaders because they were no longer doing what we wanted to. And I wonder what your thoughts are about that. Is Zelensky worried about that?
If you're an insurance salesman and you got a chance to sell an insurance policy to Zelensky, your bosses are going to be upset with you if you do so, because you're going to have a payout on that policy in a year probably. Now, Zelensky's not going to survive. He's created such animus towards him within the military, within the Ukrainian military, particularly against the Nazi, these ideological hardliners that are affiliated with the Nazi ideology. They're going to come back and go after him because he's a Jew, for starters. They're going to view this as, just as Hitler sold the meme in the aftermath of World War I that the Jews stabbed Germany in the back. Zelensky's going to become that version of it in Ukraine. The Jew stabbed us in the back. It was the Jew who I guarantee you that's where it's going to be headed in Ukraine. And, Zelensky has just been a useful tool up to this point. And his utility's over. He's toast. The only question that remains is, will he get out alive, or will he somehow be able to escape to one of his properties that he's been buying over the last several years with money pilfered from the U.S. Taxpayers and hide out there for years? My money's on the fact he's not going to survive. And whether it's a deliberate decision by the United States, okay, say, hey, tell him he's got a checkout time. That or people within Ukraine, they've got their own incentives to get rid of him. And, it could be one of those situations where one morning Zelensky comes down for breakfast and looks for his either SAS or SEAL Team 6 bodyguards, because, a lot of this personal protection detail comes out of either special operations forces in both U.S. and Britain, and looks around and says, where are my guys? It's just like that last scene of, in Godfather, when Pacino comes out and his, Italian bride she's going to drive the car and show him she can drive, and he sees the bodyguard running out. That's going to be Zelensky.
Man, and that just, I have genuine empathy and sympathy for the guy, and of course I don't wish that on anybody. But that's the thing that concerns me, is that there are potential adversaries in the Western governments, in his own government, and even still in Russia potentially. There's just lots of people that could do it. It's just he seems to be getting boxed in, and I just wonder if there's a way out for him. I truly do wish him well. I don't wish that on anybody.
Oh yeah, no.
Things are what they are, and in fact, but there's something bigger at play here. Now, toward the end of the debate, both sides, both Biden and Trump, were basically blaming the other for getting as close to World War III. But let me show you the two clips first, and then we'll talk about it on the other side. Here's first Biden.
You want a World War III, let him follow and win, and let Putin say, do what you want, NATO. Just do what you want. There's a thing called Article 5. An attack on one is an attack on all, and required response. The idea, I can't think of a single major leader in the world who wouldn't trade places with the job I've done and what they've done. Because we are a powerful nation. We have wonderful people. It's because of the people, not me. It's because of the American people. They're capable of anything, and they step up when they're needed. And right now, we're needed. We're needed to protect the world because our own safety is at stake. And again, you want to have a war, just let Putin go ahead and take Kyiv, make sure they move on, see what happens in Poland, Hungary, and other places along that border. Then you have a war.
Okay, just first of all, just on the substance of it, I mean, that doesn't even make any sense to me, that you think you're going to have World War III, because his premise is, which we've heard so many times, really from the very outset, from the administration, that, oh my God, we have to stop Putin or he's going to Paris he's going to continue going to the West, which there's no evidence. In fact, there's evidence to the contrary that he has no interest even going to Western Ukraine, much less into Western Europe. So the idea that if Trump wins, there's going to be World War III in my view, is just completely nonsense.
Well, yeah. And in defense of Joe Biden, he's not the only one saying this crazy stuff. Piers Morgan was on with George Galloway the other night saying the same ridiculous crap that, but Putin is intent on reinventing, reestablishing the Soviet Empire, which I don't remember those colonies that it had in Latin America or Africa or Asia. Oh, that's right, they didn't have it.
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
So the West has created this storyline that Putin is intent on conquering the West. Therefore, we got to send more money to the defense contractors. That's how this grift works. This is nothing but a financial grift that ends up in both impoverishing the average American citizen and putting our nation at risk of war, because the Russians, all they're seeing is that the West is hell-bent on attacking them. That's how the Russians see it. Whether that's correct or not does not matter. If that's what they perceive, then that's how they're going to react. We better understand that, because then you can say, they've got to really understand, I come in peace. I'm not just bringing you blankets laced with smallpox, a false peace. We're genuinely interested in getting along. That may be the only hope for.
The irony is that if we continue, and we, not just being the U.S. but the West, as you say, this is a unified vision and a message, if you will, is that actually increases the chance that there's World War III by keeping this war going when it should have been over like 2 months in, should have never happened. But all the time through, the latest offer by Putin for a negotiated settlement on tough terms for Ukraine, but still something they could live with. And if we keep rejecting all that, the chances for escalation keep going up.
Yeah. Well, and the Russians have become, their positions changed over the last 2.5 years now. They really did. They started off actually believing they might be able to negotiate a deal with the West, and that the West could somehow become an honest broker. But it was like with a month or two into this Putin special military operation or invasion of Ukraine, whatever you wanted to call it, Angela Merkel comes out along with Hollande of France, former prime minister, admits, yeah, we lied. Minsk was just a scam. We were using that to buy time to arm up Ukraine. And so the Russians are going, what? We thought it was a legitimate deal. And then when the West intervenes and completely scutters the peace plan that had been negotiated. A tentative agreement had been negotiated between Ukraine and Russia, which actually would have left the Donbass under the control of Ukraine. That was sabotaged by Boris Johnson acting on the orders of Joe Biden and with Lloyd Austin cheering along. So all of a sudden that shifted the war in a different direction. So as a result of this now, the Russians have finally they've awakened to the realization these people are our enemies. And there's no basis, no foundation for us to, quote, negotiate. That's why this notion that, Lloyd Austin called up the defense minister the other day, Belousov, to say, oh, let's have a chat. Let's catch up, buddy. We haven't talked for a while. Let's bygone be bygone. No, that's not what happened. Belousov told him in no uncertain terms, you bring any more of your crap in the Black Sea, it's going down. I'm putting you on notice. You do however you want to respond, but we're not going to put up with this anymore.
So that's the current administration. Is it just the U.S. in general that has now earned that bad reputation? Because if Trump comes in and saying, "Hey, I want to have a negotiated settlement," what are the Russians likely to do?
Yeah, well, they don't view Europe as a credible negotiating partner at all. I mean, who do you got? Rishi Sunak or whoever's going to replace him, Keir Starmer? I mean, these people are the equivalent of those little hairless dogs. All they do is yap and run around. they're completely useless. Uh, and that's the way. Same with France. Macron's going to be emasculated with the upcoming elections. That is going to, basically depose his party. Olaf Scholz, he's not a credible negotiating partner. So you don't really have any. There's not a unified view, vision in NATO. Number one, Europe's becoming increasingly divided, not increasingly united. And then on top of it, in the past, the United States could exercise some leadership because we did have some stature, some standing, and we controlled the money. Well, that's no longer the case really either. And all these guys were there with Biden at the summit in Italy, watching him wander around like, some lost kid at a county fair. And so, again, nobody's in charge.
Right. Now, what happens if Trump comes in and does what he just said, that he wants to get a negotiation and get this thing off the table? What will Russia do with Trump?
Yeah, they will, I think, accept him at face value, but they're gonna extract some significant demands on the United States. That's why I maintain Russia's not going to give up Odessa. They're not going to give up Kiev. And these people that insist that Kiev is it's Ukrainian. Kiev is it was a Russian city for 1,000 years. Okay, so don't tell me it's Ukrainian. It's been a fake creation thanks to Nikita Khrushchev, going back to the 50s, where Khrushchev, being a Ukrainian, gifted Ukraine, created this really, I call it a fake country, because that's what it is. But this is, Russia's going to reassert itself within its territory, and it's not going to sit by and let NATO build up potential nuclear forces on its borders.
Yeah,
that is going to be a flashpoint.
And so now let's look at the other half of that one. This is what Trump said in his warning about World War III.
And we're a failing nation because of him. His policies are so bad. His military policies are insane. They're insane. These are wars that will never end with him. He will drive us into World War III, and we're closer to World War III than anybody can imagine. We are very, very close to World War III, and he's driving us there. And Kim Jong-un and President Xi of China, Kim Jong-un of North Korea, all of these, Putin, they don't respect him. They don't fear him. They have nothing going with this gentleman, and he's going to drive us into World War III.
Now, I think he makes a couple of valid points here that we're definitely not respected, and our credibility is kind of in the toilet, although it's not just because of the current administration. This is stuff that we've been doing. I mean, you can even go back in some respects to the Bush administration and roll it on forward. But I think that you made a pretty good point just a second ago, that if Trump thinks that he's going to come in and he's just going to pick up where he left off on, January the 19th of 2021, and then that he's just going to get the same deal. Now, I think that the world is different, and Russia is very different. And I think he's going to find a lot more difficult negotiating demands from anybody else.
Well, let's separate the public Trump from the actual Trump that deals with these issues. So I know from a friend who was involved early on, like even with the decision to kill Soleimani, Trump's very reluctant to use violence. Trump's very reluctant to use military force. He is sort of predisposed to find a negotiated way out. He's not one to get into confrontation, to get into a slugfest. I say thank God for that attitude. That's the right attitude. I think when if he is elected and takes office, that will be the approach. They're going to look for negotiated settlements. Now, the key in this is the people around him. Are they going to go along with the boss, or are they going to sabotage him? Are they going to say one thing and then secretly work to try to promote conflict? Because, Daniel, let's not forget, there are billions of dollars at stake in this. Billions. For Lockheed Martin, for General Dynamics, for Raytheon, just to mention a few. There's a lot of money that's riding on this. BlackRock in particular, man, they made some big bets that they would get to control most of the farmland in Ukraine, and they're going to insist that they get their share of any negotiation out of that. It's unlikely that Russia's going to let them keep it. But what I'm saying is that this whole negotiation picture is going to get complicated because Trump will have limited control still over the bureaucracy. It was the bureaucracy that sabotaged him last time. I think this time he is going in with his eyes open, recognizing he's going to have to fire a lot of people, and they're going to have to get some people in place that are actually going to be willing to say, okay, you're the president. We're going to follow your orders. You get to make the decisions because the people elected you.
Yeah. That's that. I've talked to a number of people in the Trump orbit too, who are very sharply focused on that requirement to help the boss out. It's not just who's in charge, but it's also, personnel is policy, as they say, and he's got to have the personnel to match his policies. I want to, in the remaining time we have here, I want to really touch on what I think is maybe the most important near-term issue, because the next president, whoever it's going to turn out to be, doesn't take office until January 20th of 2025. We've got a long route to get there. And let's look at the first one here. First of all, let's say that they don't replace Biden, or that he continues to be president and tries to limp through to the end of his term. What is that going to mean? And let's look at two in particular. First of all, Xi Jinping. Let's look at a different area we haven't looked at much yet, in the Indo-Pacific. Do you see Xi Jinping doing anything that might be taking advantage of this, or that he smells a weakened Biden, a distracted Biden, or is he going to do what he's going to do no matter what?
Well, yeah, look, I think we use what I call the China boogeyman as a device to, again, justify expanding defense spending. China is not, in my judgment, going to invade Taiwan. They're not going to engage in a military conflict, because I think their calculation is we can get Taiwan back without having to fight, without having to shed blood. The Chinese have not been a militaristic society. Yeah, I mean, it's just a fact over the last 60 years. They've not been out invading other countries. They've not been sending military expeditionary forces hither and yon. They try to resolve things in a more peaceful manner. We can't get our brains around that, because we keep saying, oh, we got to send Taiwan more armaments, more Patriots, more HIMARS, more ATACMS, more whatever, because there's a good financial benefit being paid to U.S. corporations that are earning money off of that. So if I'm the Chinese, and I turn to my intelligence service right now, their collection priorities is trying to figure out, A, who's really running things behind the throne? Who's telling Biden what to do? They want to get their hand on that, see if they can figure that out. 2, they're not planning on Biden being president for the second term, so they're gaming out, is it going to be some other Democrat, or is it going to be Trump? I think they've recognized with Trump, at least they got somebody they can negotiate with. Trump, despite all of his bombast and the public stuff he says, that when push comes to shove, he'll sit down and talk. And he wrote The Art of the Deal, and he genuinely, I think, believes that art of the deal. So, and you've got the same thing happening with the intelligence organization in Russia, with the SVR, what they're looking at, trying to assess what's taking place in the United States. In fact, I think every major country in the world scratching their head trying to figure out what the hell is going on in America. How is this? Part of them will be arguing that they think that this is deliberate. This is part of a deliberate plan to project the United States as incredibly weak, that in fact, we've got some other secret plan we're working on. When they don't understand that, no, we're actually this dysfunctional. We're actually,
Yeah, I've seen that a lot over the years, because they think, oh, America is this great country, and they're not going to be that stupid in private, only in public, and it's all for show. But yeah, a lot of it, I think, is what you see is what you get. Okay, so let's shift back into the Middle East and in Europe, and specifically with Russia. Is there any moves that you think either Russia, or let's say Iran, or Hezbollah, or some of the other actors, even non-state actors in the region, might they do anything different with a weakened Biden, or really is it not going to make any difference?
Well, what I see one possibility that you could see Russia sending some anti-ship missiles, for example, to Hezbollah, that Hezbollah could use against U.S. ships off the coast of Lebanon in the event that once the Israeli invasion starts, and I do firmly believe Israel's going to invade southern Lebanon, that if U.S. ships show up offshore to provide either air support or battleships firing salvos and again into the Bekaa Valley, that Hezbollah will have armaments in place that can take out those ships, and Russia will be happy to supply it. Turnabout's fair play, going to give the United States a dose of its own medicine. Similarly with the Houthis claim that they've now got a hypersonic missile. Where'd they get that? I don't recall the Houthi Institute of Advanced Physics and Chemistry Studies being.
I don't know. Maybe Amazon. Amazon. Yeah. I didn't check, but
so they got that from somewhere. They had help from somebody. So we are entering a period where the potential for more chaos is quite high. And it's not isolated. It's not just in Gaza. It's in the West Bank. It's in Lebanon. It's the potential that is Hezbollah's in Cyprus.
Actually, that was the next question I was going to ask. I'm talking about some of the adversaries so far. What about the allies? What about Benjamin Netanyahu? How much willingness do you think he has to submit to what the White House is saying, as opposed to try and press Biden even more?
I think Netanyahu is a suicide bomber in a nice suit. I mean, he's that fanatical. He's going to blow up Israel just for his own personal political gain. When you've got the IDF, they're not exactly the most astute organization, but when the head of the IDF comes out and tells you, we cannot militarily defeat Hamas, we're the guys fighting. We're the guys with the troops out in the tanks and the armored personnel carriers. When he says that, and then Netanyahu comes back, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, it's been a long while since Netanyahu had put on a uniform, strapped on a gun, and got out of taking point on a patrol. All right.
Right.
So when you're rejecting the advice of military officers that are actually out there paying the price in blood, it shows you how out of touch with reality you are. He's a fanatic. He's an absolute fanatic. And those kinds of fanatics don't operate according to the normal rules of logic and rational thinking.
So it sounds like he's going to do that with or without Biden, whether Biden is strong or weak, or Trump or anybody else. Sounds like he's moving in that direction.
Well, he knows he's got the United States bought. He's got us, man. We're in harness. He's going to lead us wherever he wants us to go, and we're going to go. I mean, you saw that last night. Trump and Biden were both trying to one up themselves. No, I love Israel more than you. No, I love Israel more than you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but now I tell you, I got a couple of things left in the amount of time we have left here. The one I think is the most concerning to me, and this is more on like the strategic level here. You saw when Biden was in a room with Trump, and he was under stress and pressure. He didn't get to set the agenda. It wasn't like just reading from a teleprompter, but he was in a tough negotiation, tough difficulties. And you saw, he would freeze up. He was rambling and said things that were non sequitur, that a lot of them didn't even go together.
Yeah.
What's going to happen if there is an actual crisis? Let's say that Russia does something. They go beyond what we think they're going to. China does something in the South China Sea somewhere, not even with Taiwan, or something happens in the Middle East where American troops are killed. And now then we have war and peace decisions to be made, and the pressure is through the roof that more than anyone can imagine.
Yeah.
What are we going to get out of this president between now and January 20th?
You get your favorite flavor of ice cream. That's going to be it. So, the reality, they get in that situation. Who steps in? Kamala Harris? As you rightly pointed out, and you're laughing earlier in our segment, she's a joke. She has less intellectual power than Joe Biden, and that's not saying much. And so, who makes the decisions? What we're looking at is Jake Sullivan, National Security Advisor, who's a political hack. That's all he is. He's a political operative. He doesn't think in terms of international strategy. He's not really he doesn't have any experience overseas. He's been entirely one who thinks about domestic politics. Is this going to get us reelected? How's this going to help the boss? And so he looks at everything through that prism. And then the only other people, what? Lloyd Austin? Austin's a joke. And Anthony Blinken. So all of a sudden, we're left with this crew of incompetence.
Yeah, but the thing is, none of those are elected anyway. They're not the ones who have the authority to make those decisions.
But
then, you touched on it already. Now I want to go there because this is the last thing that may be the most troubling thing of this entire show. What if President Biden resigns between now and then and January 20th? Forget about running for re-election, but he resigns because he can't handle the job. And you have President Harris. What does that mean for all of these issues we've been talking about?
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting food fight because at that point, Harris is going to need to nominate a new vice president. Well, the way our system works, both the Senate and the House have to vote to install that vice president.
I was not aware of that.
Yeah, with the Republicans controlling the House, still barely, they'd be in a position to actually have some power, some sway in who gets to be vice president. So that's setting up a very interesting time. But again, it's going to be turmoil. It's going to be chaos. So at the very time, I think this has been your broader point throughout. At the very time that you've got all of these critical issues at full boil that threaten the possibility of World War III and the use of nuclear weapons, the war in Ukraine, the war between the Palestinians and the Israelis, the Houthis and their actions to shut down the Red Sea, Iran and its perception as a threat to Israel, and then China with the United States has taken some provocative actions against the Chinese, and the Chinese are out bullying the Filipinos. So, I mean, there's a lot going on there. So at the time that you got all these critical issues, where you think you would have somebody who's clear-eyed and focused and able to say, okay, we need to prioritize, we need to figure out what our interests are, we need to figure out what we can do to defuse this, not to make it worse, but what can we do to calm the waters? You've got Joe Biden, who can barely get down the steps after the debate. You got Joe Biden, who can't even speak a coherent sentence. And you got Joe Biden, who's not even sure where he is. Last night, he went to the after party, and he goes, and remember, they're in Atlanta, Georgia, not the state, not the country of Georgia, but Atlanta, Georgia, United States. And he goes, "Thank you, North Carolina."
Did he really? Golly.
Yeah. That tells you the story right there.
Last question I got for you here, because one of our viewers just mentioned something about it. It's often talked about, usually it's just kind of a weapon to throw around at your political opponents. It's been used a number of times, both on Trump and on Biden here. But what is the prospect and the possibilities of an actual invocation of the 25th Amendment?
Oh, I think it's gone up substantially since last night. But again, last night, everybody could see what we've been seeing for the last 3 years, for God's sake. Oh, the only thing that's changed is prior to last night, the media was sort of in collective unison saying, no, Biden's fine. Biden's fine. That's a Republican lie. Biden's fine. Biden's fine. Now, last night, they're going, holy crap. This is bad. So now the rush is on to figure out who's going to be the replacement and to figure out how's the replacement going to come. Is Biden going to do an LBJ? I will not stand for and will not be a candidate for the presidency. I'll just finish out my term and take all the extra cash I can scrape up with me to my retirement. That's one possibility. Or, Sullivan and Blinken and Susan Rice, and they all get together and say, okay, he's got to go. And they'll 25th Amendment him, bringing in Kamala Harris, and they'll cut the deal with Harris. Okay, if we help you get rid of him, will you keep us on? Will you keep us on the payroll? Will we get to stay in our positions of power? And Kamala, I don't think she's that stupid. I think she'd say, oh, okay, yeah. If I get the big share, got what you want. She could cut that kind of deal. So all of a sudden here you got first black woman president, Kamala Harris, even though She's Indian, Asian Indian. She's Caucasian, but ignore that. So all of a sudden, she's in position, going into the Democratic National Committee convention. She's not going to relent. She's not going to walk away and say, "Yeah, give me $40 million and I'll be out of here." No. Her ego is big enough that I think she wants that chair. And the problem the Democrats have, they don't got anybody with the kind of stature and magnetism that's going to get people rallied around him. And so I think one of the things that's going to happen out of this is you're going to see a burst of support towards Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Well, that's interesting. I'll be interested in how that dynamic plays out. That though, having the Oval Office and sitting in that chair in peacetime is obviously something that everybody covets, or like a great many anyway. But when you're sitting in that chair and there's war and peace and life and death on the line, and like possibly nuclear war, there's a lot of people who don't want to be in that chair, and I'm not sure that Kamala wants to be in that chair if that's. But that may be a possibility.
There you go again. You're thinking rationally and logically. You got to stop this.
This is probably why I'm not a big mainstream news media guy, because I just don't play the game right.
You got too much common sense.
But well, and listen, man, I can see why you were in the CIA. You obviously were well trained in all this, and all these, the way you look, pierce through all the nonsense and the stories that are on the surface to get through what's really significant and important. We really appreciate you coming on today and sharing that with us.
Always a pleasure chatting with you, my friend.
Well, listen, we're going to, obviously, this is not anything that's going away anytime soon, and is only going to continue to evolve in the days ahead. And we are definitely going to stay on top of this here at Daniel Davis Deep Dive. We're going to keep bringing Larry back on as often as we can get him on there. And in fact, we got later on today, you're not going to want to miss this. This will turn into one of our most famous or popular features, is the Daniel Davis Deep Dive Intel Briefing, where we learned about some of the best things that we showed during the week, because everybody can't watch every show, but we kind of get the best highlights of the week and then bring in some new stuff that you might not have known about today. That will be this afternoon at 2 p.m. But be sure to tune in. Be sure to like and subscribe, folks. I keep saying that. I know from the statistics, we say a good 60% of the folks watch this, but they don't actually like it. And I'm just telling you, that really helps us a lot more than you think. And since we are all in this together, I'm asking you to participate. So if you haven't subscribed yet, do that. Hit that like button, and we'll see you at 2 o'clock this afternoon.